We are stepping into a profound void today. Let's jump right in to the immense, almost suffocating psychological weight that Peter Parker carries in this specific cinematic journey. We're looking at a deeply pivotal era for the character, a true brand new day. It's a phase where the slate has been wiped completely clean, but at an incredibly, unbelievably steep personal cost. To really understand this version of the hero, we have to deeply understand grief. We're going to unpack the profound isolation, the terrifying, unmitigated threats, and the ultimate devastating sacrifices that define what it truly means for him to put on the mask when there is absolutely nothing left underneath it. It's a heavy journey, so let's get into it. I want you to really think about what it means for a hero to accept absolute, agonizing isolation as their primary duty. Maybe that's my responsibility, to live alone with the truth. I mean, this is a character who's famous for his constant chatter, right? His endless stream of jokes, his desperate need to fill the quiet, terrifying moments with noise. But here, he isn't just fighting physical villains anymore. He is actively fighting the crushing, deafening silence of his own existence. He's acknowledging that the truth, his actual identity, his deeply traumatic past, the very memory of the people he loves, is a lethal burden. And it's a burden he has to shoulder entirely by himself. It is such a profound, heartbreaking shift. We're moving from a hero who heavily relied on this massive network of friends and mentors to a totally solitary guardian. He now views his own agonizing loneliness as a necessary, impenetrable shield to protect the world. So, that brings us to Section 1, the cost of secrets, unveiling the truth to a select few.
Before this crushing silence completely took over, there was an intense, almost desperate need for connection. He needed a tether to humanity. When he utters the words, "I have something to tell you that's going to sound crazy, but it's the truth," there's this fragile, overwhelming sense of relief embedded right there in his confession. He is terrified, obviously, yet he's desperately reaching out for an anchor in a chaotic world. When someone finally learns his identity, that shared secret acts as a profound, unshakable bond between them. But simultaneously, and this is the kicker, he knows he has just handed them a ticking time bomb. The exact moment the mask is removed for a loved one, a permanent glowing target is painted right on their back. His enemies historically and brutally exploit absolutely anyone he cares about. The terrible, tragic irony here is that the very connection that heals his soul is the exact thing that puts theirs in mortal danger.
Moving into Section 2, Erasing the Past, the ultimate sacrifice for love.
The terrifying realization finally sets in that his fragile dual life has totally collapsed in on itself. Step 1. An unstoppable existential threat approaches, and it's a threat intrinsically tied to the fact that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. The peril is inescapable. Step 2. Making the impossible hard choice. The only way to stop the disaster, the literal only way to save the universe, is to completely sever his deepest ties. Step 3. Forcing loved ones to forget. Just imagine, for a second, the agonizing emotional toll of looking directly into the eyes of the people you love the absolute most, watching their confusion as they desperately plead for answers, all while knowing you are actively about to wipe your own existence from their minds. It requires unfathomable, sheer willpower to commit an act of pure, selfless destruction against your own life. It is essentially existential suicide. The tragic irony of this moment is just breathtaking. He makes this desperate, frantic promise to reunite. He assures them he will fix it, and that their love will somehow endure this mystical erasure. "I'm going to come and find you, and I'll explain everything." It's a frantic attempt to soften an incredibly fatal blow. But deep down you have to realize, he is making a promise to a version of them that is about to cease to exist entirely. He's clinging to this tiny shred of hope that true love can somehow transcend a rewritten reality. When we hear that tearing, emotional parting of "I love you," it contrasts so brutally with the lonely, inevitable reality of what actually comes next. Because the act of saving them demands the complete, utter destruction of the very person he is making that promise to. He actually follows through on his promise to find them, but when he does, the stark, cold reality truly sets in. Picture the incredibly mundane setting of the coffee shop, the smell of the roasted beans, the little chime of the doorbell when he walks in. He is standing mere inches away from the love of his life. He sees that she is safe, he sees that she is happy, and he sees that she is entirely, blissfully unaware of who he is. The universe-shattering heartbreak happens entirely inside his head as he realizes he has to bite his tongue. To keep her safe, he literally cannot explain a single thing. He's forced to introduce himself as a total stranger, his voice masking a lifetime of shared grief and love as he simply says, "My name is Peter Parker, and I would like a coffee." That's it. In that moment, he becomes a phantom, forever forced to haunt the edges of his own life. This brings us to Section 3, the burden of isolation. Living alone with the truth.
Just picture him sitting in a cold, empty, tiny room, drafting a deeply personal letter. He's pouring his entirely shattered heart out onto the page, all while knowing with absolute certainty that he can never, ever send it. He is writing it purely to process his own profound grief. It's a desperate attempt just to survive his own mind. By accepting that he is no longer just Peter Parker, but now solely Spider-Man, he actively surrenders his right to a normal, shared human experience. He is choosing to shoulder an unbearable, agonizing emotional pain in absolute, uninterrupted solitude. He is fundamentally trading his own capacity for happiness for their ongoing physical safety. It proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Spider-Man can only truly exist at its full potential if Peter Parker is, for all intents and purposes, dead to the world.
And this total isolation strips away every single safety net he once had. Gone are the high-tech, billionaire-funded, indestructible suits. Gone are the brilliant, experienced mentors constantly monitoring his vitals from some safe, high-tech compound upstate. He is entirely compromised, emotionally shattered, and stripped all the way back to being a vulnerable kid in a sewn-together cloth suit. So we have to ask, without his support system, who is left to help him face the coming storm? As the chaos begins to rapidly escalate around him, he is left completely unsupported, facing threats of cosmic proportions with absolutely nothing but his own two hands.
Let's look at Section 4, escalating threats and enemies. Facing unchecked power alone.
Thrust into a totally new, highly chaotic battle, he enters the fray fully expecting to face a familiar rogue from his usual predictable gallery. But instead, the rules of his universe have completely changed. You sure you want to do this, Scorpion? You think I'm Scorpion? The sheer panic of misidentifying a deadly foe perfectly highlights just how wildly unpredictable his battlefield has become. The power scaling has shifted completely out of his favor. He is fighting completely blindly in a universe that suddenly feels alien, relentless, and wildly hostile. There is absolutely no voice in his ear guiding him anymore, no advanced artificial intelligence analyzing the threat and finding weaknesses, just raw, terrifying instinct keeping him alive from one frantic second to the next.
Now, facing a completely unrestrained Hulk with no Bruce Banner to reason with, that is a waking nightmare scenario for anyone, let alone an isolated Spider-Man. Bruce Banner represents reason, he represents science, and he represents a moral compass, all things our hero deeply relates to and profoundly understands. But without Banner, the Hulk is just a primal, unstoppable, terrifying force of nature. This intellectual safety net being violently ripped away perfectly mirrors Peter's own tragic state right now. He is a hero stripped of his own grounding, human elements, violently forced into a corner to fight a totally ungrounded, unthinking monster. It's raw chaos versus a broken spirit.
The physical toll of this kind of isolation is just staggering. He is completely, laughably outmatched in pure strength, physically being beaten to a pulp without a guy in the chair to send backup or plot an emergency escape route. And yet, amidst this incredibly violent onslaught, we hear a desperate, overwhelmed plea. Hey, can we do this one at a time, please? It is a classic, trademark Spidey quip, for sure. But beneath the humor lies the frantic, bone-deep exhaustion of a man who is severely outnumbered and fundamentally unsupported. The joke is nothing more than a desperate defense mechanism. It's an incredibly thin veil masking the sheer terror of trying to survive a literal, unbridled force of destruction entirely on his own.
Which leads us to Section 5, a promise to protect, stepping up when no one else can.
Despite facing these monstrous, unbeatable threats, while literally bleeding and entirely alone, his core drive remains fiercely, stubbornly intact. His fundamental priority is, and always will be, pulling innocent people out of the firing line. The tragedy absolutely peaks right here, as he honors a promise made in a dead lifetime, to a person who no longer remembers a single thing about him. I promised you that I would keep you safe. Please, you just have to trust me. He's begging someone who used to know the very depths of his soul to somehow trust the masked vigilante standing in front of them. It's heartbreaking. He is a ghost desperately trying to save the living, relying on absolutely nothing but the frantic, bleeding sincerity in his voice to convince them to follow him to safety. The crushing reality of his situation is confirmed point-blank right here. You're the only one who can sense it. You're the only one who can defeat it. Imagine the terrifying silence of the sky in this exact moment. There are no Avengers assembling,
No Iron Man dropping down from the clouds in a mechanized suit. No Captain Marvel tearing through the atmosphere to save the day. It is just Peter, his homemade grit, and a literal world-ending responsibility resting squarely and exclusively on his deeply battered shoulders. He is the first, last, and only line of defense.
The contrast between his agonizing, deeply hidden struggle and the totally oblivious world around him is just incredibly unsettling. The public is endlessly fascinated with things like the Spidey Tracker app. People are looking at their phones, excitedly murmuring about Spider-Man being in the vicinity. No way, that's crazy. They treat his literal life-or-death struggles as nothing more than an entertaining push notification. To the world, he is a thrilling spectacle. He's a piece of consumable, everyday content. But in the shadows, out of the frame of those glowing smartphone cameras, he is a deeply traumatized kid, bleeding and weeping, just trying to physically hold the world together with webbing. He suffers in absolute, agonizing silence, just so that the city can safely scroll.
We've seen the monumental sacrifices. We've seen the brutal physical beatings. And we felt the crushing, all-consuming emotional isolation that entirely defines his brand new reality. As we absorb the true heavy weight of this cinematic breakdown, we are left with a profoundly haunting question. We have to ask ourselves, can a hero truly survive, psychologically intact, when saving the world cost him the very connections that made him human in the first place? It's something that really sticks with you. Thank you for diving into this explainer with me. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next breakdown.